In the quiet hours, when the screen fades to black and the notifications stop, a subtle weight settles over the mind. A comment once dismissed, a photo once shared, a post once liked, they linger, whispering judgments that never sleep. This is digital shame, a feeling born in the intersection of self-perception and the relentless gaze of an unseen audience. It is intimate, yet public, personal, yet collective. It traces its fingers through every share, every scroll, every pause before typing. And though it feels fleeting, it quietly shapes how one moves through the virtual and the real, molding hesitation, self-doubt, and the strange compulsion to compare. Here, in this invisible current, the mind meets its reflection, fractured, anxious, and deeply human. There is a moment, often imperceptible, when the mind feels the first pang of digital shame. A notification appears, a comment is read, or a post receives fewer reactions than expected. It is not loud or dramatic, there is no overt alarm, but it presses quietly, like a shadow settling across the chest. The heart does not race violently, it does not demand attention. Instead, it whispers, a subtle tug of doubt that unsettles the ordinary flow of thought. A single glance at the screen can twist perception, magnifying the self in ways both intimate and cruel. It is as if the gaze of thousands, scattered and unseen, has converged onto one small, exposed fragment of identity. In these moments, the body responds before the mind catches up. Shoulders tighten, a pulse quickens behind the ears, the stomach coils slightly, and the skin flushes. These are the physical signatures of shame, ancient, inherited, reflexive. Digital spaces may be new, but the body does not distinguish between the whisper of judgment in a room and the cold, pixelated stare of a comment section. The sensation is real, embodied, and impossible to ignore. This weight does not always announce itself immediately. Often it grows through subtle comparison of friends' achievements, a stranger's curated image, the endless parade of seemingly perfect moments displayed online. Each scroll is a mirror, reflecting back fragments of inadequacy and imagined criticism. And even when no explicit comment or critique exists, the mind interprets absence as judgment, likes unclicked, messages unsent, attention withheld. It is here, in this quiet appraisal, that digital shame begins its work, planting seeds of self-consciousness that will grow unseen. There is also a rhythm to this experience, a cadence that is both universal and personal. Some feel it as a fleeting blush, a quick glance away from the screen, an urge to delete or hide. Others carry it longer, replaying interactions, dissecting posts word by word, image by image, like a mental microscope trained on their own vulnerability. In all cases, the emotion is not merely about what is online. It is about how the self is perceived, both by others and by the inner observer that never rests. This chapter is not about the mechanics of social media, nor about the platforms themselves. It is about the lived experience, the quiet, often solitary awareness that arises when one's personal moments enter public or semi-public digital space. It is about that sudden, almost imperceptible feeling of exposure, and the tension it creates between self-expression and self-preservation. To recognize digital shame is to acknowledge the delicate interplay between the external and internal. It is the knowledge that a single post, a fleeting comment, or even a passive like can ripple through the mind, triggering reflection, doubt, and sometimes regret. Yet it is also the first step toward understanding, a necessary pause to notice the emotional truth before moving deeper. In the quiet recognition of this weight, one begins to see the contours of the emotion, its subtle pressures, its sudden clarity, and its persistent intimacy. And so, the mind hovers, caught between the urge to withdraw and the compulsion to continue, scrolling and sharing, watching and judging. This is the weight of the glance, the delicate burden of being witnessed in a world that never sleeps, a world where the private self becomes perpetually negotiable, forever under the soft, unblinking eye of the digital gaze. Digital shame rarely arrives fully formed. It grows quietly, nurtured by patterns of thought and experience that predate the device long before the first screen lit a child's face. In childhood, the mind learns early lessons about approval and disapproval, about what is safe to reveal and what will elicit scorn. A misplaced word in class, a teasing glance from a parent, a friend's whispered judgment, these moments imprint the nervous system, teaching that exposure carries risk. The same lessons echo decades later in the form of likes, comments, and shares, each interaction stirring the old currents of self-consciousness. Family dynamics often lay the earliest groundwork. Children learn to anticipate reactions, to read subtle expressions, to calibrate their own behavior in response to imagined scrutiny. Praise is treasured, criticism feared. Small errors feel monumental, missteps linger in memory far longer than successes. These patterns, initially adaptive, become vulnerabilities in the digital age. Online spaces amplify the tension between self-expression and judgment, transforming instinctive caution into persistent shame. School experiences add another layer. Peer comparison, the longing for acceptance, and the sting of exclusion leave indelible marks. A forgotten homework assignment, a laugh at the wrong moment, a misread social cue. These micro-experiences teach that one's identity is contingent upon others' perceptions. In offline life, these moments fade with context and intimacy, softened by personal relationships. Online, however, they are magnified and immortalized. The permanence of digital records makes the mind anticipate scrutiny with heightened sensitivity. A past embarrassment can be revisited at any moment, triggering the same emotional response as it did the first time. Personality traits and individual temperament further shape susceptibility. Some are naturally more self-reflective, more attuned to subtle social cues, more sensitive to judgment. Others carry an innate resilience, shrugging off perceived slights with ease. Neither is inherently better. But in the digital environment, heightened sensitivity can create fertile soil for shame to grow. Even fleeting moments of comparison can spiral into prolonged self-questioning, where imagined opinions of others become tangible forces in the mind. Culture and society provide yet another backdrop. Norms, expectations, and the ever-present pressure to perform or conform inform the inner dialogue. The digital landscape does not exist in a vacuum. It reflects the broader social currents that have shaped identity for a lifetime. Every post, every interaction is filtered through learned assumptions about success, appearance, morality, and worth. The mind instinctively measures itself against these invisible standards, and when perceived shortcomings appear, shame quietly takes root. Even early experiences with technology themselves can contribute. The first time a comment was ignored, the first post that went unnoticed, the first picture that drew teasing or mockery. These minor incidents leave emotional traces, reinforcing the idea that exposure carries risk. Over time, a subtle neural pathway is strengthened: show the self, risk embarrassment, withdraw or edit. These habitual responses form the scaffolding of digital shame, making it nearly automatic when the conditions repeat. By understanding these roots, it becomes clear that digital shame is not an invention of the internet. It is an ancient emotional pattern, reshaped by modern tools. What is new is the scale and speed of exposure, the intimacy of surveillance, and the relentless comparison that digital spaces enable. The seeds planted long ago in the mind find fertile ground here, and even the smallest trigger, a comment, a momentary scroll, can blossom into a full emotional experience. Digital shame is, in essence, a dialogue between the past and the present, between formative experiences and modern technology. To trace its origin is not to assign blame, but to illuminate the unseen forces that shape the way one feels when the gaze of the world, virtual, fragmented, relentless, settles upon them. Even when the mechanics of digital shame are understood, the mind rarely submits quietly. There is a resistance that emerges, an internal dialogue between knowing and feeling, between rational observation and emotional reaction. The moment a post is judged or a comment interpreted as critical, the mind splits. One part attempts to reason: it is just online, it is temporary, it does not define me. Another part, quieter but insistent, murmurs, perhaps I am not enough. Perhaps they are laughing at me. This tension creates a persistent echo, a looping conversation that the mind cannot easily silence. The inner echoes of shame are subtle yet relentless. They manifest as replaying scenes, rereading comments, imagining alternative outcomes. The brain searches for patterns, for hidden meanings, for a sense of control in a space that feels unpredictable. Yet the more it searches, the more it discovers evidence, real or imagined, that validates its discomfort. Every pause before typing, every hesitation to share, every deleted post becomes a microcosm of resistance, a tug-of-war between the desire to participate and the fear of exposure. Cognitive dissonance fuels the struggle. One knows intellectually that social media is curated, that perfection is a mirage, that criticism is often projection. Yet the emotional response defies logic. Shame is not rational, it is visceral, a knot of feeling that twists in response to imagined judgment. The mind attempts to reconcile this conflict, oscillating between self-defense and self-critique. Resistance, then, is both protective and self-punishing. It shields the self from further humiliation while simultaneously reinforcing the very shame it fears. Rumination becomes a natural extension of this conflict. The mind examines each post, each image, each interaction, replaying scenarios endlessly. Small triggers, a delayed reply, a missed notification, a subtle change in tone can ignite spirals of self-questioning. Questions without answers echo: did I say too much? Did I reveal too little? Did they notice my mistake? The mental rehearsal mirrors the very social judgment that the mind anticipates, and in doing so, magnifies the emotional weight. Resistance also emerges in behavioral patterns. Some withdraw entirely, avoiding posting, commenting, or even engaging with digital spaces. Others overcompensate, curating content meticulously, striving to control perception with an intensity that borders on obsession. Both responses are attempts to manage the inner dissonance, to regain a sense of agency. Yet they rarely eliminate the emotional undercurrent. The echo persists, a reminder of vulnerability, a subtle insistence that the mind is both observer and observed. Cultural and social scripts reinforce this tension. The mind is steeped in narratives that equate visibility with value, attention with worth. Every moment of digital exposure is filtered through these narratives, which can heighten the resistance, the simultaneous desire to be seen, and fear of being judged. The inner conflict becomes a mirror of broader societal pressures, reflecting not just personal insecurities but collective expectations. And yet, within this resistance lies insight. By noticing the echoes, by attending to the push and pull between feeling and reasoning, one glimpses the mechanics of shame itself. Recognition of the internal dialogue is a subtle shift, a moment of awareness where the mind can observe without immediate judgment. Resistance is no longer purely an obstacle, it becomes a map, revealing the contours of fear, vulnerability, and the persistent human desire for acceptance. The struggle is not easily resolved. The echoes will return, as they always do, with the next notification, the next scroll, the next fleeting exposure. But the awareness of resistance transforms the experience, allowing the mind to perceive itself in the act of responding. And in that perception lies the first hint of freedom, a quiet space in which shame is no longer purely external or imposed, but known, felt, and eventually understood. There are moments when the fog lifts, when the persistent weight of digital shame loosens, if only slightly. These are not dramatic epiphanies, but subtle shifts in perception, quiet realizations that arise in the space between scrolling and stillness. Perhaps it is noticing that the imagined judgment of others is more vivid than their actual attention. Perhaps it is recognizing the curated nature of every online life, a mosaic of selected triumphs and concealed struggles. In these fleeting clarities, the mind glimpses the discrepancy between perception and reality, between the intensity of feeling and the actual stakes at hand. The turning point often begins with self-reflection. One observes the cycle of anticipation, exposure, and internal critique without immediate reaction. It is the moment of pause, the gentle distancing from one's own ruminations. A comment once agonized over may appear smaller in memory. A post once feared as disastrous may seem ordinary, even trivial. The mind, for the first time in a while, experiences a subtle liberation from its own projections. This is the quiet work of insight, noticing patterns without being swept away by them. Cognitive reframing plays a role in this clarity. Recognizing that a lack of likes or attention does not equate to personal inadequacy shifts perspective. One begins to see digital interactions as information, not judgment, as opportunities for connection, not verdicts on worth. This realization does not erase shame entirely, but it transforms the emotional landscape, replacing helpless rumination with measured observation. Awareness becomes a tool, not a weapon, allowing the mind to navigate digital spaces with less automatic self-critique. Clarity also arises from empathy toward oneself and others. Understanding that every user is navigating their own vulnerabilities diminishes the illusion of a singular, omnipresent gaze. Others' reactions are filtered through their own anxieties, biases, and distractions. A harsh comment or perceived indifference is rarely a precise measure of personal value, it is an artifact of another mind. In recognizing this, shame loses some of its sting, its weight dispersed by perspective. Another subtle source of clarity is the recognition of permanence versus impermanence. Digital content is fixed in form but fluid in meaning. A post that seemed mortifying yesterday may fade in significance tomorrow, interpreted differently by new eyes, understood differently by the self. The mind begins to see that emotional intensity is not always proportional to reality, and that perspective is malleable. These moments are often fleeting, returning unpredictably amid scrolling, notifications, and new content. Yet even brief, they provide essential insight. They reveal the patterns, the triggers, the habitual interpretations that sustain digital shame. They illuminate the possibility that the mind need not be captive to every imagined judgment, that the self is more resilient than the immediate reactions suggest. Ultimately, moments of clarity are invitations rather than conclusions. They offer a glimpse of the mind's capacity for reflection, for subtle recalibration, for noticing without being overwhelmed. In these pauses, one begins to perceive that digital shame is not an immutable force, but a dynamic interplay between perception, memory, and emotion. The mind sees the mechanism as clearly as the feeling itself, a delicate balance between experience and interpretation. And in that awareness, the first threads of integration can begin to form, a gentle, patient weaving together of insight, feeling, and self-recognition. Moments of clarity do not erase the past, nor do they guarantee the future, but they open a space where digital shame can be observed, understood, and ultimately, transformed. Integration begins in quiet moments, often unnoticed, when the mind no longer reacts immediately to every scroll, every comment, every perceived slight. It is not a sudden triumph over digital shame, nor a complete absence of discomfort. Rather, it is the soft settling of awareness, the weaving together of experience, emotion, and reflection into a coherent understanding of self in a world mediated by screens. Here the mind learns to acknowledge vulnerability without being dominated by it, to hold both exposure and resilience in simultaneous view. The first step in this integration is recognition. By observing patterns of shame, what triggers it, how it unfolds, and how it interacts with past experiences, the mind gains clarity. Recognition is gentle, without judgment. It is an act of naming the emotional currents that have long been unspoken. In this awareness, one begins to see that shame is not an intrinsic flaw but a signal, a guide pointing toward unresolved insecurities, social conditioning, and the human desire for connection and acceptance. Acceptance follows closely behind. To integrate is to embrace the self as a whole, including the fragments that digital interactions often amplify: fear, hesitation, embarrassment, and longing for approval. Acceptance does not mean resignation or self-excuse. It means acknowledging that vulnerability is part of being human, and that exposure, online or offline, will always carry some emotional risk. By allowing these feelings to exist without immediate suppression, the mind reduces their unconscious power. Integration also involves context. Digital interactions are fleeting, curated, and partial representations of life. By situating online experiences within a broader landscape of human relationships and personal identity, shame loses its outsized influence. One begins to differentiate between transient reactions in a digital space and the enduring reality of self. The mind, once caught in cycles of rumination, can step back and observe a comment as an event, not a verdict. A post is a moment, not a measure of worth. Narrative reconstruction is another key element. The mind can reinterpret past experiences, reframing them as lessons rather than failures. A post that once triggered embarrassment can be seen as experimentation, a step toward expression and connection. Digital shame, once an oppressive force, becomes a mirror reflecting both growth and areas for gentle attention. In this reframing, emotional resilience strengthens, not by erasing vulnerability, but by contextualizing it. Practical reflection and mindfulness intertwine naturally with this process. Awareness of internal responses allows one to pause before reacting, to notice judgment without internalizing it, and to differentiate between imagined criticism and reality. Integration is less about controlling the digital environment and more about cultivating an internal landscape where emotional responses can exist without dictating identity. Finally, integration is relational. Understanding that every user navigates similar vulnerabilities fosters empathy toward others and oneself. Recognition of shared human experience diminishes isolation, transforming shame from a private burden into a point of connection. The mind begins to inhabit digital spaces more fully, not as a battleground of judgment, but as a place of exchange, observation, and reflection, where selfhood is maintained even amidst exposure. Integration does not eliminate the flickers of digital shame. They still arise in response to posts, comments, or moments of comparison. But the mind no longer yields unquestioningly. Instead, these moments are met with awareness, understanding, and the soft reassurance that vulnerability is not failure. The self is not diminished by exposure. It is expanded through acknowledgement, reflection, and the gentle alignment of feeling and insight. In this integration, digital shame becomes neither a master nor a stranger. It is recognized, understood, and held within the broader continuum of human experience. A quiet teacher guiding towards self-awareness, empathy, and the capacity to move through the digital world with both sensitivity and groundedness. There is a moment, often at the end of the day, when the screens dim and the quiet returns. In this stillness, the mind lingers on the echoes of digital life, the posts made, the comments read, the judgments imagined. It is here, in the absence of distraction, that reflection takes its most intimate form. The weight of digital shame, once pressing and urgent, softens into awareness. The mind begins to trace the patterns it has lived through, noticing the interplay of exposure, judgment, and self-perception. Silence allows the subtle textures of feeling to emerge. One becomes aware of the body's response, the tension in the shoulders, the flutter in the chest, the uneasy coil of the stomach. These physical traces of emotion, once dismissed or ignored, are now seen as maps of experience, signposts pointing toward what matters, toward what the self holds precious and vulnerable. Reflection transforms these signs from sources of discomfort into invitations to understanding. In this quiet space, the mind can also witness the resilience cultivated over time. The cycles of shame, rumination, and resistance are no longer purely destructive. They are recognized as part of a rhythm, a human pattern shaped by both past and present, private and digital lives. Each flare of embarrassment, each pang of inadequacy, becomes a note in a larger composition, a reminder that to feel deeply is to exist fully. Digital shame is no longer an intruder, it is a companion that carries insight, however uncomfortable. The gaze inward is gentle, contemplative. One sees the threads connecting childhood experiences, social conditioning, and online interactions, threads that have woven the tapestry of digital shame. The mind observes without accusation, noting how early lessons in judgment and acceptance manifest in modern contexts. In doing so, the self becomes coherent, less fractured by every fleeting online moment, more whole in its awareness of continuity between past and present. Poetry emerges in these reflections. The quiet of post-screen hours reveals that shame, though weighty, is a mirror rather than a verdict. It reflects desires, fears, and the longing to be seen and understood. Each flicker of discomfort is entwined with the capacity to feel joy, to experience connection, to navigate vulnerability. There is beauty in this balance, the acknowledgement of imperfection alongside the recognition of resilience. The human self is not defined by a single comment or a single post. It is the aggregate of awareness, experience, and memory, moving through digital spaces with cautious curiosity and quiet strength. Ultimately, reflections in silence offer closure, not as an end to digital shame, but as a meditation on its presence. The mind learns to coexist with it, to witness without surrendering, to observe without self-condemnation. In these hours, one understands that exposure and vulnerability are inseparable from the pursuit of connection, whether virtual or tangible. Digital shame is both mirror and teacher, revealing the contours of the self in a world that is simultaneously vast and intimate. And in this awareness, a subtle peace emerges. The mind rests in its own gaze, neither hiding nor performing, neither lost in imagined judgment nor seeking endless validation. The screens are dark, the notifications silenced, and yet the mind continues to move gently through its own reflections. In this quiet, digital shame is no longer a weight, but a witness, an enduring deeply human presence, shaping self-understanding with quiet insistence, guiding toward balance, insight, and the soft, patient embrace of one's own humanity.